was blind, but now I see. Let it shine on me, let it shine on. Let your light from the lighthouse shine on me. Let it shine on me, let it shine on me. Let your light from the lighthouse shine on me. Now here comes the Holy Ghost. The Holy Ghost come along late. And when they come along late, they get your name straight because they drive the song. Don't fool yourself. Now you don't pick up the speed, and that's where you get this rhythm and swing at it. Let it shine on me, let it shine on. Let your light from the lighthouse shine on me. Let it shine on me, let it shine on. Let your light from the lighthouse shine on me. When they give out a hymn, must I be carried to the sky on flower beds of ease? And must I fight to win the prize and sail so bloody sea? Let it shine on me, let it shine on me. Your light from the lighthouse shine on me, shine on me, let it shine on me. Your light from the lighthouse shine on me.
Hello, my name is Lynn Kimbrough of the Denver District Attorney's Office, and today we'll explore the history of victims' rights in America, featuring Colorado, which has been a leader in modern reform. We'll begin by stepping back in time to look at the emergence of laws as they pertain to victims' rights. Then we'll examine more recent developments in the United States as victim advocacy began to take hold. And we'll observe the cutting edge of victims' rights in an effort to reveal what's next for our society. The purpose of this film is to provide you with a historical storyline, a better understanding of our federal and state victims' rights laws, and to create a sense of tradition that you will carry with you while you serve victims of crime. The victim rights movement in America appears to be wrought from the relatively recent efforts of the 20th century, but the original ideas are property of the distant past and far-off places. The victim rights narrative begins in Babylonia in the time of Hammurabi. Hammurabi was one of the first to consider victims' rights and restorative justice. Although harsh and oftentimes inhumane, Hammurabi's laws and code of ethics highlighted protection for vulnerable victims and required the offender to help make the victim whole or risk losing a body part. Justinian I of Rome furthered the endeavors of Hammurabi by creating a code that placed special emphasis on the separation of public and private laws, a tradition we value today. Also during antiquity, Jewish law paralleled the ideas of an eye for an eye, the most strident form of victim restitution. As we move forward in time, our focus shifts west to England, where concepts of common law were developing by the 11th century. Common law blended elements and ideas of the Hammurabi Code, the Justinian Code, and a traditional body of unwritten legal precedents created by local courts and administrators. These laws were refined and adopted with the ushering in of the Magna Carta in 1215. The Magna Carta was the first to suggest that everyone, noble and common, had basic natural rights that were ordained by God and guaranteed by the state. This enlightened thought would travel across the Atlantic and prove to be the most important notion in the design of the United States body of law. That being said, America would still have its own unique learning process. In America, founding fathers like Thomas Jefferson and John Adams were taking cues from the enlightened thoughts of men like Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau. The forefathers of America drew from an amalgamation of common law, written statutes enacted by the legislative body, and the precedents laid out in the Constitution. However, the victim was still carrying the brunt of the responsibility. From the time of the earliest settlers in the 16th century until early in the 19th century, the victim often acted as the arresting police officer, investigator, prosecutor, and even had to hire a circuit judge to come to his or her jurisdiction to try their case. In most cases, the judge would order restitution payment to the victim as punishment. By the 1850s, a new focus was drawing attention away from the singular victim and placing it on the greater community. Public servant jobs surged with the creation of extensive law enforcement entities and elected public prosecutors. These new men of the state provoked a spotlight on adjudication for the total society rather than the individual victims. Also, restitution owed by the perpetrator was seen as owed to the state and no longer to the victim. A wider berth was afforded to the reform of the convict rather than making the victim whole. Penitentiaries where felons could do their penance cropped up across the U.S., while victims' rights decayed in the civil court system for the next 120 years. The modern law and order movement marked the end of this era and established a base for a new way of viewing victims' rights. There were, however, moments where victims' rights issues resurfaced and created new kinds of social services.